Spurs at Grizzlies, Game 3. Marco, who do you like and why?
I like the Spurs, and this is the injured player theory, part 2.
All right, so give us the injured player theory, part 1.
Okay, well, injured player theory, there's 2 types of injured player, when you lose a player and when the player comes back. This is the player coming back. Ginobili came back in Game 2. So anybody that's followed, our podcast, listened to me, knows that that's a go against because the line's going to be inflated because the star's coming back.
There's going to be an overreaction to his return.
The public want to bet them. The team that was playing at a higher level because he was out now has a little bit of they relax. And the flip side, their opponent, who maybe took it easy in the last game because he wasn't there, now has to focus harder because they got to contend with the star. So it's a great situation to go against the team when the star comes back. That's exactly what happened. San Antonio won, but they didn't cover. Now it's Game 2. He's back. They're going on the road. They're going to Memphis. The public, again, this is pretty similar to our Orlando-Atlanta game that we did earlier, is the public's going to look at Memphis and say they won one game there. Ginobili came back, but they still played them tough. They could have won that game. They led for a good part of that game, just faded in the final minutes. This is a situation at home. Memphis is going to get the win.
So the line's out on this, right?
The line is out on this. Now, what you're not going to like in this game with the opening line, it opened at a pick. The line has gone to Memphis -2. Now, I do have a strong feeling on that. I believe that this could be, and it would be a perfect situation for it, the sharps getting in front of this number and creating the steam, where this line goes up and coming back.
You're one of the best. You're one of the best guys when it comes to trap games, if not the best on the planet. When it comes to reading the steam,
Well, we made a bet in the last game, and I'll bet you that this line comes back down on game day to the Spurs. You want to bet that on game day this number comes down?
So you're saying that on game day, well, I'm not saying necessarily that's not the case because I think the public is going to be heavily on the Spurs. But the point I'm making is if you're going to, as a wise guy, if you're going to start the avalanche, you can only push it in the direction that the public is inclined to go. So if I asked you again, now we bet this on the last game, is at sportsbookspy.com where the bet percents for every game, who is going to have more of the action come game time?
This game will probably be very close to being 55-45, close to even. I don't think it's going to be one-sided. But I do firmly believe that there's going to be a lot of money come in late on this game Saturday and take the Spurs plus the points.
But you think it's going to be wise guy money?
I do.
Wow. All right, so let's do that. Let's remove, because reading the market and handicapping the games are different stories. It's just the general concept that the viewer has to realize is that the wise guy can start can give the spark, but the kindling's got to be, to extend the analogy, the people saying, yeah, you're right. The Spurs, or the Memphis is only laying 2. That's not enough. We want to bet this thing up to 4. Then they do the buyback. Who in the heck is looking at an 8 seed laying 2 points, chomping at the bit? So I guess the question is, you said 45 to 55. How about I say, I'll give you 55. I have to be 55 or above. I'll take the Spurs at sportsbookspy.com, and if it's 54, you win. Okay? And I'll take the Spurs, because if it is a wise guy, well, forget who you think the wise guys are going to bet. Who's the public going to bet?
The public.
You think it's going to be break even?
I think this game will be break even.
So then what are the wise guys buying? What are the wise guys buying back then? Is the only way that you could, if you have to spend the money to push the line up, if the public's not pushing it up, you buying it back, it's too expensive to have to bet it at pick, bet it at or -1, bet it at -1.5, then maybe not bet it at 2, and then hope no other wise guy comes in and moves it down before you can. Wait till game day. But all that said, well, first off, in the 55, do you want that back?
Sure.
All right, so we did 300 on the other one. So let's be very clear about this. If it ends up Spurs 55 or above, I win. Anything else, you win. 300.
You got it.
All right. So let me ask you this. When have you ever seen an 8 seed laying points at home.
Right
This
now,
feels like a pure value play to me.
it does. To me, again, we've talked about the public handicaps with their eyes. They've watched the first 2 games of this series. The Spurs have not looked good. The Spurs, down the stretch of the season, because they had a lot of injuries down the stretch, didn't play well, and they even rested some players at the end. They had trouble with Memphis in both games. Memphis has been scoring points. They're going to look at this and say, if you could play that tough at San Antonio, you're coming home for Game 3. People like to look at Game 3 for the home team in Game 3 the same way they look at the home team in Game 1 of the series. They put the emphasis on that game. That's the game they need. San Antonio is the veteran ball club. They know they're sitting at 1-1. Their goal was to take one of these 2 games, and it's back to where it's supposed to be. They got home court. I like the Spurs here. You're going to see Ginobili will have a better game than he had in Game 2. He scored, I believe, 17 points in Game 2. Gutty effort from him. The Spurs will win this game.
See, I think you're giving too much emphasis. By the way, I'm going to agree with you here. I just think we're coming at it from totally different directions. I think this is a potential trap game. I think that unless you thought that the split because I'm really flabbergasted by this, because Atlanta split and somehow they're demoralized. Okay? Now we got, hold on, we got my turn. We got Memphis splitting, and somehow the public's so enthralled by the fact that they split that now they're favorites at home. How in the hell can we say relative? How in the heck can we say relatively the difference between San Antonio and Memphis is 1-8, and now you've got the 1 getting points, and you've got 4 and 5 with Orlando or in Atlanta, and Atlanta's getting to. There's a 4-point there. Atlanta's getting to. Memphis is laying 2. One's the 5 seed, one's the 8 seed. I mean, and you're on Orlando, and now you're on. It makes no sense to me.
You don't have to make sense. You just have to cash the ticket sometimes. This is a situation where we're different is you keep looking at the Atlanta game. What I'm saying is because of the history with Atlanta, they've got, till you knock this team off, the team that ends your season every year, that is your Achilles heel. And the fact that they had Orlando, if they take Game 2, that series was over. If they would have came back to Atlanta up 2-0, that series is done.
Same thing with Memphis.
But Memphis played a team that they're not supposed to, the expectations were not there, okay? The way that Atlanta beat Orlando during the regular season. That's the difference. Orlando did not play well against Atlanta during the regular season.
All right, well, here's it. Clearly, I would agree with you in the following, is what makes a guy that can hit 55% is the nuance. And clearly that's something you do very well. And the fact that you and I don't always agree, most of the time you're going to be right. I don't know if it's 55 or 57 or 60, but certainly more than half. I guess the role I'm trying to play here is the sophisticated viewer. I've been around, I've bet for a long time. I think what you may be overvaluing here, and it doesn't change the play, it probably just affects the timing of when to bet it, is I think that this is a potential trap game that the bookies want the Spurs. Doesn't mean you don't want to bet the Spurs, but I see no scenario that they're going to overreact to the split so much that this is not going to 2.5.
Okay. I'll give you something that I've used before, and maybe this will clear the picture for you. Have you heard me use the phrase when a team wins ugly or a team looks good in losing? I throw those
I understand the concept.
Okay. Orlando won ugly. They won in an ugly fashion. Memphis losing to San Antonio last night lost in a good-looking fashion. The Star came back, and they still were able to play San Antonio toe-to-toe. The public perception from those 2 games, the way I read them, and that's something that I'll put my reading ability on that against anybody on the planet. And I don't want to sound cocky on that, but I can read the public. I feel better than most people. They're going to look at those 2 games, and they're going to have a better impression from Memphis coming out of last night's game than they did of Atlanta coming out of the Orlando game.
I guess psychologically, the idea of, well, why don't we do this? Really, I think we both agree there's value. I think there's an overreaction. I think it's the bookies wanting Memphis action, to be honest with you. And the fact that I'm saying the Spurs are going to get more than 55% is a sign of that, because if the Spurs are getting more than 55%, there's no reason for this line to be. I think at Pick'em it's 50-50. I think if this game stayed at Pick'em, it'd be 50-50. I think the wise guys, I think a lot of people are looking at Memphis and saying, the Spurs this is not a typical 1-8 matchup. The Spurs are hobbled. They've been hobbled for weeks and weeks. Memphis is a better 8 seed than the average. People just aren't getting it. But that's the point. If this was a 4-point, like when the Cavs tonight, we're taping on Thursday.
The Heat, you mean?
Oh, yeah, I was thinking of LeBron. When the Heat, the Cavs aren't playing it. When the Heat go into, what's the line on 4.5?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that feels like that's a 2 versus a 7, and it's 4.5. If the Spurs were 4.5 here, I totally would understand them saying, oh, Lordy B, Memphis is better than a normal 8, and the Spurs are worse than a normal 1. But look, this is a 6.5 point difference between 4.5 and 2 the other way. I think that it's priced in, as the stock guys say, that Memphis is not a normal 8 seed.
There's no question. I mean, the whole Western Conference, the disparity in the West from 1 to 8 is so much smaller than the disparity from 1 to 8 in the East. It's light years difference.
I think it's priced in. I think there's value. I think the key here is, at least between what we're disagreeing with, why don't I allow you to give your projection?
Okay. I'm going with San Antonio to win this game 95-92, calling for the Spurs outright win. It will be a tight ball game, but the Spurs, their experience, the veteran leadership on that ball club, when it gets to crunch time, like we talked, the veterans don't make the mistakes. That'll be the difference in this game.
Now, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to endorse it. But now here's the question. If you're right, maybe you wait and play later, meaning if it ends up being the public overreacting even more and betting Memphis, it could go up to 2.5 or 3. I can't fathom Memphis laying 3. I think if you like the Spurs, you bet it early here. So really, we both agree on the game. The question is, how's it coming in on game day?
I agree. On game day, I say the line on the Spurs will come down on game day.
But you think it's because the wise guys are going to bet
Yes.
it. All right, it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comments section with Marco and me. That's it for this week. Marco will be back early next week with more NBA winners.